Good morning, Ashley. Are we good to go?
Good morning. Yes, we are.
Awesome. Okay, let's take a quick look. I think we're going to be okay for quorum. So, good morning, everyone. I am going to call the Public Works Committee to order. And first things first is information about joining our meetings. We continue to meet via Zoom webinar. Hopefully soon we can see people in person, but for now, please know that you can join us and find information on how to join on our website under the meetings tab. You can always call City Council and leave a voice message by calling 406-552-6012, and you can email City Council at council@ci.missoula.mt. All of these meetings are recorded in case you want to view them later at your convenience. And if you're in the meeting and would like to provide comment, we will let you in so you can do so. Okay, with that, Ashley, if we can get a roll attendance, please.
Anderson, Becerra,
Present.
Carlino,
Present.
Contos,
Here.
Hess,
Present.
Jones,
I just heard she's in, I think.
okay, Jordan,
Present.
Nugent,
Present.
Savage, Cheryl, Vasika,
Present.
West. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Next, we have minutes from March 2nd. Are there any changes to the minutes? Okay, seeing none, those will stand approved. Quickly to see if we have any public joining us to provide public comment on items not on the agenda. We don't have anyone yet. So with that, we have 3 items on our agenda today. The first one is a purchase of 3 Ford Explorers for the police department, and Scott is here to tell us more about that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, sorry, my phone's ringing there.
I was wondering what that noise was.
It wouldn't silence for me, sorry. So Scott Caldwell, Fleet Director for the City of Missoula. And so this referral is for the purchase of 3 Ford Explorers for the police department. I'd ask this committee approve, and then the council approve the purchase of 3 police interceptor Ford Explorers from Duval Ford of Jacksonville, Florida for $48,640.08, totaling $145,920.24. This is a cooperative purchase through the state, and these come in a little bit above the budget for these, $45,000 each. If you remember, on the 16th, I brought 3 pickup trucks, 3 Dodge pickup trucks, 1500 SSV pickup trucks to replace 3 that were in the fleet. Once those were approved through council, I went to order them, and the manufacturer cut off ordering, so they were no longer available to purchase. So that's why these 3 are actually coming in now. If you remember, we did 3 police interceptors before, the Explorer package, and now we're coming back with 3 more. And this isn't 3 more as in we're adding 3 more to the fleet. It's just We can't replace those pickup trucks with the Dodge 1500 SSVs. We're replacing them with the Explorers. Again, this purchase has been approved on the CIP and part of the Vehicle Growth and Replacement Program. These vehicles are replacing older vehicles. Two older pickup trucks will most likely stay in the fleet as in a lesser position, and the other one will be replacing the pickup truck that was struck on the railroad tracks. Again, these do come in a little bit above budget, but overall in the CIP, there's plenty of funds to cover that overage, and we will not be going over budget in the CIP.
Great. Thank you, Scott. So these are not an additional purchase. It's just replacing something that we had already approved, but we didn't have the possibility of getting those by the manufacturer. Okay, I see a couple of hands up. Quickly. John Contos, go ahead.
Hey, Scott, I was curious. You said that you were originally going to get 3 pickup trucks, but that didn't work out.
Yeah,
They don't make them anymore, or what happened there?
The manufacturer cut off ordering, and that is happening more and more often in the environment that we're currently in. The biggest problem is trying to get microchips to make the pickup trucks or make the vehicles. I mean, we're seeing it across every manufacturer, Ford, Dodge, Chevy, you name it, across every manufacturer. They just can't get the microchips to build the computers for the vehicles in a timely manner. So Dodge had a certain number of vehicles that they said that they were going to make for the Dodge 1500 SSVs. We just missed the cutoff of the number that to get in that number.
Sure, makes sense. My other question is these Explorers, what engine's in that?
It's a V6, a 3.6 V6 twin turbo.
You feel like that's good enough as opposed to a V8?
So this Michigan state testing, when you put these cars up against the Dodge Charger V8s, 5.7 liter Dodge Charger V8s, they test out very, very well. They have a little bit of a lag time because they are because they're a turbo engine, so it takes a little bit of acceleration to get them going. But overall, they stand up very well in comparison to the V8s of the Dodge Chargers.
I see. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Kristen.
I just got a new big screen over here and my mouse gets lost all the time now. So sorry about that. Thank you for your time. I just had a couple questions about, I hear you saying that the demand is tough, and I thinking about kind of like some budgetary concepts, but also kind of climate collapse concepts. And I have a couple questions. One is about the, is it a good idea to buy secondhand cars to save some money?
Not for a police fleet. The biggest thing for police fleet is it has to be pursuit rated, and we can't just buy any vehicle and put police lights on it and call it a police car. It has to be pursuit rated. Otherwise, the city opens itself up to a huge liability risk.
Mm-hmm. Does that though mean that there aren't any secondhand pursuit related cars that we could be accessing, like a pool of cars we could be looking at all?
So you're talking about admin vehicles, that type of thing?
I guess my general question is can we save money looking at secondhand cars? I understand that they have to have certain requirements, but I'm wondering, do the secondhand vehicles exist? And could it be a way that we could cut some cost savings?
I have never seen anything that we could buy secondhand vehicles that are actually be a viable option for us. Most secondhand vehicles coming out of police fleets have 100,000 miles plus on them, just like ours do. When we go to sell them, they they have well over 100,000 miles on them. Plus they have the idle hours on them to create roughly about another 100,000 miles on them. And that's what I see pretty much across the board when you go even to look at used vehicles. They're the police vehicle fleets, they use them well.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, can I have another question, please?
Go ahead.
Thank you. My other question has to do with, meeting some of our climate goals here in town. And I'm wondering, is there any thought put into getting climate smart cars that are going to help us attain our goals?
Sure. So the last time we bought these Explorers, I bought hybrids, 3 hybrids and 3 standard V6 motors. And to be honest with you, the police department just doesn't like them. They just don't.
Don't like climate change. So I think that sometimes we might have to weigh things up a little bit and decide which one we hate more. And I think a lot of us hate climate change more.
Right. So, and then there's just no pursuit rated electric vehicles out there. I've talked about that with Charlotte Piesick. Obviously there's been a discussion about electrifying our police fleet. But to be able to do that, we would actually have to implement a policy change in the city to where the police would no longer be allowed to pursue. And so that would require a policy change to be able to do that. And then there would be the possibility of electric vehicles, then full electric vehicles. And then, but there's only one hybrid vehicle available in any kind of police package, and that's the Ford Explorer hybrid.
Thank you.
Great. I would also think, Scott, that the technology that some of these cars require in order to have a comprehensive network of communication from police department and between police department requires a special kind of vehicle. So, Daniel.
You are correct. It does take special wiring, special function for all the police equipment and that kind of stuff. I mean, we have to order these very special. There's extra fuse panels and extra wiring and communication cables that run from the trunk all the way up to the front. And the ability to communicate with the PCM, ECM, to be able to put all that information into their video system so that when they're running all their mileage and their coordinates and all that kind of stuff actually go into their video. So yeah, it's pretty extensive what we have to do to make these vehicles work.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I kind of had the similar question. I was just wondering if we found other vehicles that police departments use that are hybrids or electrified, and they do meet the standards for pursuits. If that's something that we could pursue, I guess I'm just curious, like, what the plan is for the city to electrify our vehicle fleet. Are we just gonna, like, I don't know. I'm just curious how many years out, because time's ticking on the climate scale. And then the other thing, also, I was just curious how, like, why we keep buying vehicles from like Jacksonville, Florida. And I know that we're on a low bid, but I'm just curious, like, how are we, like, is this company just bidding to all cities in the country, or like, how did we end up with Jacksonville, Florida for buying a bunch of police cars? Like, how are we advertising the bids, I guess, might answer that question.
Sure. So to answer your bid question, this is a state bid. So the state goes out to bid. We're just tagging on to the state bid. So the state, they advertise throughout the nation for any dealership to bid these. I know we'd love to buy local, and sometimes we do get local vendors to bid, but when I say local, I mean Montana. There are no Missoula vendors that will bid these. Lithia Ford, Lithia Dodge, Carl Tyler does not bid any of our local bids. In the past, I've hand delivered bids to our local vendors, and they refuse to bid them. So, and in this market that we're in right now, where it's very hard to get vehicles, they're actually refusing to sell. There's some that they're even refusing to sell to government, because they're like, why should I sell to government at a cheaper price when I can sell it to normal guy coming off the street for market price? So we're buying from Jacksonville, Florida, because they're the ones that bid, the state bid, and that's where we're going for that. As for electrification of police vehicles, there is no electric vehicles out there that we can pursue that are pursuit rated. Just flat, there isn't. Not to say that there's not really fast electric vehicles out there, like Teslas are super quick, and could they probably do the job? Sure, they could. I mean, electric power is known for its torque and its ability to go fast, but none of those vehicles are pursuit rated. So if we were to try to get into something like that, then we carry the liability for that. If something happens, then the city of Missoula carries the liability. And so our plan going forward, obviously for the general fleet, we're working very hard to get into electric or hybrid vehicles. The problem is infrastructure. We have to have the ability to plug them in. We have to have the ability to charge them. If I just buy electric vehicles today and don't have the infrastructure to plug them in, then we will go very, very green very, very quickly, because those cars will sit. So we're working on infrastructure plan. But the problem with different structure right now is we have 3 facilities that are in flux. We don't know what we're going to do with City Hall. We don't know what we're going to do with the 1305 complex, and we don't know what we're going to be doing with Parks Department. So those 3 facilities are in flux. We don't know where to put charging stations. We're talking about including the parking garages for that. So again, we're in the process of trying to figure out an infrastructure plan to work into that. But so the plan going forward is to work into hybrids and work into electric in the admin vehicles and in our general fleet. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Scott. Next I see Sandra.
Thanks. I had the same question as Kristen did a couple of years ago when I first got on council about buying used cars instead of new ones. But Scott told me that we buy the new cars, and then as soon as they become decommissioned, we give them to different departments. I'm assuming that's still true, Scott?
That is true, yes. So we have a drop down. We have a drop down fleet. So we replace the more used vehicles on a more regular basis. And then as we drop those vehicles down out of the more used spots, then they go into other fleets that might use them, and then we take out really old vehicles that their life is done.
Great.
Thank you.
Amber.
Yeah, thanks. I was actually going to ask that, Sandra, so I appreciate the clarification from Scott. I'm assuming that, and you don't have to answer this now, it's just something that I want to be on people's radars, and maybe you could come back to us in the future around it. But as McKinstry's doing their audit for all the different departments around the city, I'm assuming fleet is going to be a big piece of that. So I'm just, I understand that we probably have the technology out there, but it's not being built. Technologically, for a pursuit vehicle, that's not available yet. But I will be curious to see as we get the McKinstry recommendations back how that ties into the fleet. I guess that's not a question exactly, and I would be happy to make the recommended motion.
Great, thank you. Stacy.
Oh, thanks, Madam Chair. I was just actually going to make the motion as well. And thanks, Scott, so much for all of his explanation. Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's a constant balance between making sure that we're providing the equipment that our police department needs, but also balancing our climate goals. And I'm looking forward to the technology. I know that Ford is trying to electrify their entire fleet. So hopefully within that comes a, given how many vehicles that they provide to departments across the country, that ends up ultimately having a police pursuit rated electric vehicle. So can't come soon enough, but thanks so much for all your work on this.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Scott, for all your answers. And I know everyone on our staff is doing what they can to given the technology, the supply and our budget to get us to a good place. Okay, so with that, we have a motion on the floor, no public to provide public comment. So we will take a roll call vote, please, Ashley.
Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
Contos,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Vasika.
Yes.
Okay, that is 10 yeses and 0 nos.
All right, West is here, and I'm
Oh.
a yes.
Okay, thank
I
you.
snuck in.
11 yeses and 0 nos.
Great, thank you. All right, we have 2 more items on the agenda. We have a presentation, so let's just keep that in mind. And the next item is award street maintenance and construction materials contract presented by Brian Hansel. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Meredith. Good morning, everyone. Brian Hensel, Deputy Public Works Director for Streets. I have not personally met some of the new members, so nice to meet you, sort of. So this is my annual referral to award purchase agreements for the purchasing of construction materials and also winter sanding aggregate to the low bidders, which they're all local vendors except for Idaho Asphalt in, well, Idaho, obviously, for our chip seal oil. And I hope that you've all had a chance to look at the bid tabulation. And you can see the highlighted cells in green. Those are the low bid unit prices for each of those materials. And these are the materials that streets will use throughout the construction season for our various paving maintenance projects, chip sealing streets, and then obviously the winter sanding aggregate for applying traction materials during the winter. Pretty straightforward. You may notice if you look at the bid tab, I show a history of low bids for these materials, and you'll see that this year we did see some increases, most notably the chip seal oil, the CRS2P. I believe that went up by 39% this year. We saw increases in some of the asphalt, 6.9, I think to 8.9. I kind of was anticipating this based on preliminary discussions with some of these vendors, and the presiding theme through conversations with all of them was the uncertainty and the volatility of what the price of crude oil was going to be as we move into the summer. And one thing that I started working on yesterday in response to a question that Mirta posed during our Public Works discussion was how that price of crude can affect our materials, and would this filter into possibly some budget conversations for future fiscal years, and do we think this could level out? So I got online and I found a website that showed some historic crude oil prices for the last 70 years for what they call Western Texas Intermediate. Don't ask me what that is, but apparently that's a type of crude oil. And I didn't get a chance to finish, but I started writing down crude oil prices for about the same time from usually like February 25th to February 27th, which is about the time I anticipate that the vendors are looking at those prices to try and figure out what they will charge for asphalt and chip seal oil. because we usually open the bids on March 1. So they all wait till the last minute for obvious reasons, so they can get a good idea. Okay, what's this going to cost? And I just did a preliminary search on it. I didn't really get a chance to really delve into it and try to correlate increases or decreasing in our material costs based on crude oil. But at very least, I think next year I'm going to include, just as an information item, another row of crude oil price histories where you can compare, crude oil to here's what our low bids are. Do with it what you will. Maybe at some point I'll put together some charts and graphs and see if I can draw some conclusion. But my preliminary review, it sort of made sense in some cases, and other times the price of crude didn't seem to have much of an effect. So I apologize, I didn't have that ready yet today, but more to come. So
Thanks, Brian.
yeah, Myrna, thanks for that question. It was interesting to look into it. So
Love to give you a homework that you
yeah,
all
you're
right.
not alone in that one.
Okay, we need a motion, but also questions from council members, please. Sandra.
I'll make the recommended motion.
Great. Kristen.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions. I'm happy to vote for this, but I wanted to ask you a couple questions, please, about potential green ways we could be laying down road. Even just thinking about the color of the materials that we use, affecting how much of a heat sink we have here in Missoula. And just wondering, for me and for folks who might be tuning in, listening, I'm wondering what the department's approach is to kind of pick greener materials.
I have done some research over the years on alternative products, and unfortunately, I don't get bids for asphalt from Florida or California. And so the types of material that I use is really restricted to what can we get locally and what can we afford. If I wanted to buy some, say, different colored asphalt from Colorado or California, I probably could do that. But then I'd be coming to hit you folks up for a whole bunch more money. So I won't tell you if that's right or wrong to do, but it will come with a cost. I have taken on efforts over the years to try and improve our green practices. For example, this year's chip seal, Myrta also asked me, because of this inflationary trend we're seeing, will I have to cut back the amount of streets that I'll be doing maintenance on? And that's a possibility. Chip seal program was one of my biggest concerns. And stay tuned, I'm still not done with winter yet, but how we get through winter and how the budget pans out. So far, just a quick look yesterday, I think I can make it all happen. So far, so good, even with that appreciable bounce in the chip seal oil. But I'm not saying that it could get worse next year. Who knows? But one thing I will say, one of the ways that I'm making it happen this year is I'm going to recycle a whole bunch of chips from prior years that I've stockpiled. That's going to save approximately probably $100,000 to $150,000. So that's how I'm making ends meet this year. But then what do I do next year when I'm out of those chips? So it's a never-ending balance in logistics and funding at streets. And if I can find ways to save money and then help the city achieve our climate goals, absolutely. But oftentimes achieving climate goals and saving money don't go hand in hand. And I'll take every opportunity that I can to efficiently and effectively use taxpayer provided resources. If I can save them money and achieve the city's goals, I'm all for it. And even like the recycled millings that I put in the alleys, those come off paving projects and I save them. We do a little processing on them. I reuse them. I would venture to say street division is probably one of the greenest departments that you folks have jurisdiction over. I don't recycle by the brown paper bag. I recycle by the ton. So. And as there is you guys have all heard about the different work teams that the mayor and Dale have put out. Well, I'm on the climate action team. And so we've had a few meetings, but we're just getting started. So I think some of your questions, Kristen, on electric vehicles and different ways where we can improve our climate effect, I think you're going to see a whole bunch more information in coming months.
Great.
May I just make a comment, please?
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that information. I really am not trying to say that you're not worth the time and money. I know you work really, really hard.
Oh,
As a mother of 2 teenagers who have climate anxiety, I think it's really important that we start asking some of the harder questions. Maybe it's time to start spending more money to make sure that we can change a few things. But I am totally going to vote for this. I appreciate the information, and I'd like to just start, bringing up these conversations more. And I'm sure you guys have been having them, and I'm new, and I'm going to want to bring them up and hear them as well. So thank you very much.
you bet. Oh, yeah, you bet, Kristen. Anytime. Hey, feel free to call my cell phone if you have questions.
Heidi,
Do you still need a motion?
I do. Thank
Okay,
you.
I'll make the
actually already made
motion.
it.
Wait, who made the motion?
Sandra did, I think.
Oh,
I
I did.
did she? Well, I just wanted to add that I'm always really excited to see this item come forward every year. Because it's this like immediate look on just how much you guys get done every season. And I know potholes is something we hear about the most, but it's also one of those things that is never ending, and you guys do a really good job keeping up with it. So thank you.
Thank you, Heidi.
Yep, I agree. Not only are you guys good at balancing all the different things that need to be balanced, like budget and, going through the list of projects, but you always find creative ways to meet those goals. Brian is the MacGyver of the streets.
Thank you, Merton.
Okay, Sandra.
Just real quick, I wanted to, I guess there's no public here, but in case anybody is watching later, you can report potholes to the street department. There's a place online and a phone number that you can call. And I reported one when I was on a walk the other day, and the next day they were fixed. So I just wanted to give kudos to Brian and his team. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, no public, to provide public comment on this item. So we'll take a roll call vote, please, Ashley.
Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
Contos,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Bazika,
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Okay, that is 11 yeses and 0 nos.
Great. So that will be on our consent agenda. And thank you, Brian. Good to see you.
You guys too. Thank you very much.
Okay. And last but not least, we have an informational presentation on our resource recovery facility, and Connell is here to present.
Good morning, Martha and everybody. So I'm Gene Connell, the Resource Recovery Facility Superintendent. And this informational presentation will just give you an overview of what we do out here at the Resource Recovery Facility. Are we ready to go?
Yep.
Okay. There we go. All right. Does that look all right?
Yep.
All right. An overview of the Resource Recovery Facility. Oh, let's change the page. Okay. So the structure of the Wastewater Division, we function under Public Works for Utilities, Logan McGinnis. Logan is responsible for stormwater, drinking water, and wastewater. And so we'll talk about the wastewater section, which consists of the collection system and the resource recovery facility. Took my, there we go. So first I'll introduce the collection system. So the collection system is the infrastructure that conveys Missoula's wastewater to the resource recovery facility. The graphic is a representation of actual sewer lines in a portion of the city. There's a total of 377 miles of sewer line underneath the city of Missoula. That gravity line is sloped down. It starts out at about 8 feet deep and goes down to about 20 feet deep. Once it gets to 20 feet deep, we need to lift it up in a lift pump station back up to about 8 feet. There are 31 pump stations throughout the city. Each of those stations is connected to radio telemetry so that Pat can monitor the pump stations, and if anything enters an alarm condition, like a high level or a pump failure or a power outage, he will get notified and he can address it 24/7. In Missoula, we have some non-standard sewer systems that are the 1800 step systems. That's septic tank effluent pumping systems. So in existing neighborhoods in Missoula, in the past in particular, it was financially difficult to go into an existing neighborhood and dig those large deep lines down into the street. And so a solution that was used at the time was the septic tank pumping systems. And so a septic tank was installed on these residences mostly, and they function as a septic tank, but the effluent doesn't percolate down into the ground. It is pumped through shallow, smaller pipes that then joins our collection system. So there are 1,800 of those out there, and the city owns those and maintains those. Pat Brooks is our collection superintendent. He has a crew of people that goes out and maintains that infrastructure. All the sewer lines need to be maintained using high pressure jetting. The top picture there shows that jet truck. It has a reel of hose that goes down into the sewer line, and under high pressure, it pulls itself up through the sewer lines and scours out mostly grease or rocks, sediment, to some degree tree roots, keeping them clean. A second common activity is video inspection. The lower picture is a video truck. It has a little robot camera that goes down the sewer lines, and so he can inspect them, look for problems, and schedule maintenance if needed. He has a record of basically every foot of sewer line in the city. He does focus on problem areas, just basically conserving resources. He can't do every foot every year, but he does it on a priority basis. Now, the older clay tile pipes need to be cleaned every year. More modern PVC pipes are cleaned every other year. The PVC is slicker and the joints are smoother. Less tends to get caught in them. The older clay tile pipes are still very viable. They're not really installed anymore, but there are clay tile sewer pipes in Rome left over from Roman days. So if they're installed properly, they can last a really long time. Now, the collection system in Missoula has a very low Montana Municipal Insurance Authority rate. We have, Pat has less than one backup per year. It's a very low number. It's the lowest in the state. He runs a very, very good program. A few years ago, that insurance rate was calculated, and it was estimated because of the low number of backups in Missoula, it was estimated to save about $1 million a year. Moving on to the resource recovery facility. The resource recovery facility is the wastewater treatment plant, Garden City compost, and the poplar farm. A different view of that, the treatment plant is in this smaller space next to the Clark Fork River. Then the composting facility, Garden City compost. And then next to it, 160 acres of poplar trees that we water with treated effluent. This is leased property, leased from the Klaus family. And moving on to the wastewater treatment facility. So the wastewater treatment facility treats about 7.5 million gallons a day. And of that, almost every gallon goes back into the Clark Fork River as treated wastewater. The volume that we remove is very small, but important for the river in the treatment. From that 7.5 million gallons of water from the citizens of Missoula, we are able to recover methane gas that we use to generate electricity on site. The organic material and nutrients are removed and become part of Garden City compost. In the summertime, we pump 1.2 million gallons a day of treated water over to irrigate the poplars. So in that way, in the summertime, we're able to reduce our impact on the river even more by, discharging, 6.3 or whatever million gallons a day rather than the 7.5 million gallons a day. So although we remove organic material and nutrients, it's not zero. It's down to what the levels we're regulated for and that are considered safe to put into the river. But by diverting that, we help the river even more. One product, the lower arrow down here, one roll-off bin per week of trash goes to the landfill. I'll explain where that comes from. That's removed from the wastewater. That's a product we just haven't found anything that we can use it for or recover. So that roll-off bin goes to the landfill. Missoula's plant is considered an advanced secondary treatment. There are 2 levels of treatment. The first level, primary treatment. Missoula started primary treatment in 1962. Prior to that, Missoula was discharging about 2.5 million gallons a day to the Clark Fork River, untreated sewage. So in 1962, we started treating our water. This process removes about half of the organic material. So in 1962, we started halfway cleaning up Missoula's water. The water coming into the plant is screened. That screening, which is mostly trash, goes to the landfill in that roll-off container. It's pumped up so it can flow through the process. And we do grit removal, which is removing sand and gravel. This vortex structure is engineered so that the sand and gravel settles out, but the remaining water and organic material flows to the next step of the process. The grit also goes to the landfill. Those 2 products go to the landfill. Now, primary clarification, the primary treatment is a very simple process. It's sedimentary. The water flows through the primary clarifier, those round structures you see out here at the plant. And it's about water solids separation. So what is heavier than water settles to the bottom of that clarifier and is pumped off for further treatment through anaerobic digestion. And the clarified water, which still has half the organic material in it as suspended and dissolved material, heads over for secondary treatment. In the 1970s, advanced discharge standards were passed for all municipalities. So in 1974, we had to add an additional level of treatment, secondary treatment. Secondary treatment is a biological process That primary effluent that has suspended organic material in it goes through these bioreactors. It's largely an aerobic process. We use the modified Johannesburg process, which allows us to remove phosphorus and nitrogen. And that's done in these first sections that are anoxic and anaerobic. I won't go too far into the weeds on phosphorus and nitrogen removal. It's an advanced process that was only developed in the 1970s. The bioreactors have biomass in them. It's zooglobal growth. It's the same ecosystem that exists on the rocks on the river. That is an attached growth inside this bioreactor. It's bubbling, it's tossing around. They form colonies like snowflakes. We call flock particles that have a very high surface area. They tumble through the water that needs treating, and they stick to and glom onto the organic material and use it as a food source. So they grow and multiply and clean the water for us. And so after going through the bioreactors, we again need to separate that biomass from the treated water. So secondary clarification is mechanically pretty similar to primary clarification. The biomass is heavier than water, settles down to the bottom of the clarifier and is returned. The clarified water is headed for UV disinfection to make it safe to put back into the river. And the effluent is headed for the river. Now the solids recycle back and we harvest out a certain amount every day to maintain a stable population because they just keep growing and growing. And one of the most important process control conditions is we need to maintain a stable population. And so we harvest some of that biomass out every day. Now those solids, so the biomass that we harvest out needs to be dewatered, and the primary sludge from the primary treatment process goes through anaerobic digestion and fermentation. So it's split between a fermenter and a primary digester. The fermenter is the first stage of digestion, and it creates volatile fatty acids. It breaks down complex organic material and biologically breaks it down into smaller components, including volatile fatty acids. We reroute some of those volatile fatty acids back into the treatment process in secondary treatment to enhance phosphorus removal. And again, I didn't go too far into the weeds with this. I'd love to give any of you a tour and go into greater detail. Anaerobic digestion, the digester detention time is about 30 days. It goes in at 4% solids. It comes out at 2% solids. And so we need to dewater it. Both of those sludges, primary and secondary, are dewatered. We have a centrifuge and a volute press, two different pieces of equipment. The water that's squeezed out goes down to the drain, and the biosolids go to compost. One byproduct of anaerobic digestion is methane gas. It's natural gas like you buy from your utility. It's generated on site as biogas. This gas is utilized to generate electricity in our cogen process. We can also use it in our boilers, like when we're maintaining the generator, we still utilize it in the boilers. And if we're in a situation where we're not able to use either of those, it is flared off. So the methane is converted to CO2. But our goal is 100% utilization. Now the cogen system generates electricity here at the plant. About 24% of our plant needs. It runs 24/7. This generation of electricity, because of the laws in Montana and with Northwest Energy, is a non-export system. We're not allowed to put electricity back onto the grid. So we need to utilize it all on site. Again, about 24% of what we need. So we're able to use it all. It's a 200 kilowatt generator. And it's been in operation since June of 2018. Very solid operation. We do have downtime for maintenance. It's our goal to minimize that. The cogen, what that means is we're generating electricity and we're also at the same time collecting the heat. It's an internal combustion engine. Normally you'd have a radiator that would blow that heat off to the atmosphere. But in this case, we use a heat exchanger to put it into our hot water heat loop here at the plant. So the system is in the mid 90s, 90% efficient. It's like 95%, I think, efficient system. Now, a project we're working on right now is another non-export electrical generator in solar photovoltaic cells. Right now, we're finalizing a contract. We plan on using Ameresco with third-party financing. With solar projects, there's a 26% tax incentive available. But as a government entity, we're not able to take advantage of that. But by using a third-party private company, where they can take advantage of that tax credit, and they will purchase and install the solar system at no upfront cost to the city. We will have an agreement with them to purchase the electricity at a fixed rate, an attractive rate. And at a later date, if we choose to, we can buy the facility from, or buy the solar farm from them. This contract is being finalized now, the final conditions. It's a 462 kilowatt installation, and it'll provide about an additional 20% of the plant needs. And again, we can't it has to be very carefully engineered, because if we put more solar panels on there than we can use at our peak demand, it's simply a waste. You bought too many solar panels, because that excess electricity cannot go back onto the grid. So it needs to be designed, very carefully to be efficient and not have an excess of panels or spend any more money than we need to. It is kind of interesting. The load on the plant follows the activity of the community, and it follows fairly closely to sunlight. So the demand on the plant peaks at between 10 a.m. and noon, and continues strong through the day when people are awake and businesses are opening and people are using water. And then at night, people are asleep, businesses are closed, we use less water. So it's not a perfect match, but it's a pretty good application of solar energy. That is planned to go on the north side of the plant in this open area that's unused right now. All right, move on to Garden City compost. So all the biosolids that are removed from the wastewater at the plant go over to Garden City compost. They also accept wood waste and yard waste from the public. There's a small tipping fee to drop off wood waste. Those two products go together with 1 part biosolids and 3 parts wood waste to produce about 24,000 cubic yards of compost per year. Now, both of those products, the biosolids and the wood waste, would normally go to the landfill. So we're able to divert all of that out of the landfill, and to put that in a landfill, to me, would be doubly wasteful, because you're filling up the landfill and discarding a useful product. So Missoula is very lucky to be able to use this product. In 1977, it started up as a private company, and we paid Eco Compost to process our biosolids. This is our least expensive disposal option. It would cost more money to landfill it, not to mention, in my eyes, being inefficient. This is our least expensive disposal option. Another product that we take, we are beginning to take more and more food waste. And right now we take all of the food waste, like spoiled produce, et cetera, from all the Walmarts in Montana. So we're starting to venture out into food waste also. Now, the city has invested pretty heavily in the composting facility. That top picture is a loader that was purchased by the city. And one of the first things we bought was a mixer, so that the white piece of equipment that's being loaded by the loader is a mixer. So it very quickly, efficiently mixes the wood waste and biosolids. It actually improves the quality of the product and it reduces labor. The city purchased a grinder for that wood waste. I love watching that thing operate. It's an awesome piece of equipment, chewing up all of that wood waste, and I love seeing it just spew out the other side as chips. The city also purchased a new screen to screen the material into finished product. This is an electric piece of equipment. As is possible, we are going electric. The mixer is electric. The screen is electric. Right now, the loaders are diesel, of course, and the grinder is diesel. It needs to be able to move around a little bit. In the future, I would like to see, like when we do ultimately replace this, going more and more electric. There's less maintenance involved in electric equipment, and if you can get green electricity, it lowers our carbon footprint. Okay, now who uses our compost? The largest piece of the pie are land reclamation projects. It's the one benefit of living at the hind end of one of the nation's biggest cleanup efforts. So a very good chunk of our compost is now between here and Butte as part of reclamation. The next bigger slice of the pie is landscapers. They come in with dump trucks, et cetera, and use it in their landscaping projects. The smaller slice of the pie are citizens that come in and get a pickup truck load for their garden, or a reasonable grocery bag or something like that. Garden City Compost has had no price increase since we purchased it in 2016. I can say honestly, the composting facility pays for itself. Particularly if you have to give it credit for services of processing the biosolids. We used to pay a private company. Now, if you allow that budget in the operation of Garden City Compost, we sell about $600,000 worth of compost per year, and it is paying for itself. Now, new markets. I think marketing compost is kind of interesting because it's kind of fixed regionally, because like sand and gravel, the transportation cost, you're not really buying the sand and gravel, you're buying the transportation of it. Compost is a little bit like that, in that we have a captive market within, say, 200 miles of Missoula, roughly. We can go farther. Otherwise, the transportation becomes expensive. And so the markets we sell to, as I said, reclamation, the public, and landscapers. Right now we're trying to get into agriculture. That's kind of a tough market because chemical fertilizers are cheaper, but more and more farmers are realizing that healthy soil chemical fertilizers do not make healthy soil, and compost does. And so we're trying to reach into that market. I think composting or compost is a good example of in economics of having a low marginal utility. If someone comes in and says they want a yard of compost, you say, well, I'll give you a second one for half price. And they're going, I just need a yard. So having a sale to our existing market, like lowering our price, you either need compost or you don't need compost. And to try to sell to our existing market just based on sales or price is tough. So that's why we're focusing on expanding the market, particularly into agriculture. We would also like to see Parks and Rec use some more of our product. The poplar plantation. So the poplar plantation was planted in 2014 on that leased land. Oh, you can't see very well. This was construction in 2014. This might be a little better picture. You can see the drip irrigation lines being laid out. It was planted that year. So at the end of the season, you see that the leaves are changing color a little bit in the fall of 2015. The end of the second season, it's amazing how these things grow. They grow incredibly fast. So the trees now have a diameter of about 10 inches. The intended project was to grow the poplar trees as saw logs, sell the saw logs, and recoup all of our spending. In 2018, there was a changing of the guard, and my boss, the superintendent at the time, Star Sullivan, retired. Bruce Bender had retired, and Tom Platt, the contractor that was doing the work on the poplar plantation, unfortunately passed away. So all of that institutional knowledge went away, and some new people stepped in. And we started looking at it, and we're going like, how's this going to work? And so at the time we were able to, Ross Mollenhauer talked to a professor at the university, and a group of MBA graduates did an evaluation for us. They used it as a final project, and were able to help us out. They did a very good job, a very thorough study. But the results of that study wasn't really what we wanted to hear. So in the executive summary of that study, they found no evidence of a viable market for hybrid poplar saw logs within a reasonable distance of Missoula. A market for ply logs existed, but the number of potential buyers was few, and the cost of shipping the logs may outweigh any potential returns. There are very few outlets for hybrid poplar wood chips, and those that do exist will not yield returns enough to justify this option. And so, the market that existed when this project was planned, we found it no longer exists. And there are poplar plantations in Oregon that have since sold the land, cut down the trees, and the sawmill associated with it shut down. That market just did not develop. And so here we are. Market forces have changed. We need to adapt. Missoula Public Works is now directly managing the project. In the past, we had a contractor managing the trees. We brought in Anderson Montgomery Engineering to do an analysis of alternatives. So where do we go from here? One thing when you start talking about the poplar plantation that I think is important is the non-monetary value. So in 2021, that water diverted from the Clark Fork River onto the poplar trees. There was 588 pounds of phosphorus, over 11,000 pounds of nitrogen that did not go into the Clark Fork River. And in Missoula, our community values our rivers, our ability to recreate on them and fish on them and protect the environment. It's clearly a strong community value here. So the alternative study looked at some alternatives. There was short rotation coppicing, which if you, poplar trees, like if you have one in your yard or whatever, they send up what I call suckers. They coppice, so they send up shoots on their own. And so one possibility we looked at would be to harvest the trees on about a 3-year rotation, chip them as a feedstock for the composting facility. The trees would be allowed to coppice and come up in a brushy configuration. And then we would go back in 3 years and harvest that brush. So it would be an ongoing thing. This was kind of my favorite option. I really liked the, the symmetry of it. Another thing we looked at is alfalfa. We looked at growing hemp, Christmas trees, sod, and combined alfalfa and sod. Now, there was also looked into the non-fiscal issues, effects on the environment, risk to the city, financial risk, the climate change effects and carbon sequestration, public perception, compatibility, implementability. So how does it fit into our system? How can we implement this in an appropriate, relatively easy way? So these were also looked at as non-fiscal. Now, the non-fiscal ranking, I know you can't read that, but each option was ranked by the factors: environmental quality, risk, climate, public perception, compatibility, implementability. And the yellow line over here on the right gives an overall ranking. I know you can't read the details there. I'd be happy to get them to you. But I do feel our consultant was objective and thorough. So if you look at the scores, a low score is good. So a 1 is a desirable score. And so the short rotation coppicing that I like scored the best in non-fiscal issues. A sod farm scored poorly. There a lot of chemical use, a lot of fuel and mowing and harvesting, etc. Didn't fare very well. Alfalfa did pretty good. Alfalfa didn't do bad at all. Now, from a fiscal point of view, he looked at 10-year net present cost. And so this is over the span of 10 years, what is this going to cost us? So a low number is good. So Christmas trees came out very good in a potential financial perspective. My favorite short rotation coppicing was the most expensive. And you have a range going from there. So you kind of have a little bit of a mixed bag. So just to begin to sort these out a little bit, I made a table where if you take a low number, which is good, times a low number, you get a low number. High number, you get a large number. So a combined ranking, low is good. Alfalfa kind of starts to come up to the top. It has a very good non-fiscal ranking and a pretty darn good fiscal ranking. Christmas trees came in later, mostly because of its risk. It would take 7 years to sell your first Christmas tree. There are maintenance intensive and subject to the market. You might have a really good year, you might have a really bad year. the city will be taking on risk with that option. And so then the ranks go down. My favorite did not rank very well. And you have to consider the cost of doing nothing. So the 10-year net present cost of not doing anything would be, it's estimated to be $3.41 million. So not doing anything has a cost associated with it. The carbon sequestration in the trees is estimated to be about 13 metric tons per year. Sounds like a lot. In the scheme of things, it's not that big compared to the carbon footprint of the city, of the municipality, what we use as the city of Missoula. It's a pretty small part of it. And so you could probably take that money, and from a carbon sequestration point of view or a lower carbon footprint point of view, that money could probably be better spent somewhere else.
Jean, I wanted to give you the heads up that we have about 5 minutes left, unfortunately.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for the warning. And so we need to make a decision, and we need to balance environmental responsibility and fiscal responsibility. And so a committee is being formed to help us with that. This is the trend team. Jeremy and Logan are putting this together. That stands for Treated Effluent and Nutrient Diversion Team. The charter of this committee is to operate the Poplar Farm in a financially sustainable manner over the long term, reduce nutrient loading to the Clark Fork River, and this may be required for future permit compliance. Seek to maximize the application rates for water, nitrogen, and phosphorus, and consider community values. So those are the values that we want to use in making this decision. Talk about our resource recovery section, capital. So one thing I want to bring up right away is sewer rates. Missoula, Montana has the lowest sewer rates in the state of Montana. And even with the approved rate increases over the next 3 years, in 2024 will be around $20 for an average residence, which will still be the lowest in the state. Capital spending, see the graph here with the treatment. You know, it varies year by year what goes into the plant versus compost versus the collection system. All of those systems take capital input. And so one thing I like to point out is the Resource Recovery Facility in Missoula provides advanced wastewater treatment, on-site renewable energy production, on-site biosolids composting, on-site nutrient recovery to the poplar trees, all for the lowest wastewater utility rates in the state. I think that's something that Missoula can be proud of. So that wraps it up. Any questions? Heidi?
I was just going to offer to anyone who wants to read the study that I have a copy of it, physical one, that you're welcome to borrow from me. I just want it back, because there's a lot to it and it's awesome.
Yeah. Jean, thank you so much. I am always so impressed with everything that happens at the Resource Recovery Facility, which is properly named because of everything that happens there, and amazing how the science can be applied to everyday issues and problems. And we have about 1 minute, maybe 2, and I apologize for not budgeting this better, but I wanted, this information to be shared with all of you. And if you have additional questions, or I don't know if during onboarding the new members got to visit the facility, but I'm sure Jean would you know, have us over if anyone wanted to. So let's see. Okay, maybe not. We unfortunately don't have time for questions. But I hope that this got you intrigued enough to ask questions and send them over to Jean. Would that be okay, Jean, if council members send you questions?
Absolutely. I would be happy to answer any questions and provide a tour to anybody that wanted to come out.
Okay, Amber, I see your hand up.
I'll just be really quick since we're not doing questions. I have a bunch of questions, which I'm sure a lot of people do. I just wanted to thank Jean for coming. It's a fascinating system. I had no idea until I did the tour how fascinating it is. And yeah, I just wanted to say thanks because I think I appreciate you bringing this item. I know we're tight for time, so I'm not going to ask my questions right now, but this was great. Thanks.
And I would ask that if you have questions, please include other council members, all of us, so that we know we get, you know, that answer back and can learn more about it. And I'll be happy to coordinate a visit for anyone who's interested. Sorry again that we didn't have time for questions. And Jean, thank you so much for bringing this to us. Super informative.
Thank you.
Okay, and that was our last item on the agenda, so we would be adjourned. Thank you, everyone.